Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our continuing work with Glamour. I guess we've been working with it quite a bit and need to continue. We're kind of focusing on the conspiratorial thinking, if you can call it that, the Kama-Manasic response to these conspiracies and the danger that's involved with violent emotional reactions to these kinds of thoughts. We're still in a position around the 4th of March. I haven't really checked. It's morning here in Finland. I haven't really checked whether there has been any kind of stirring as a result of this QAnon prophecy that on or about the 4th of March, uh, the former President Trump would be re-inaugurated. Of course, it sounds fantastical, but there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people who are indulging in fantasy at this time rather than realistic thinking. And it's some of the worst traits of the Piscean energy, to which the United States is the heir, we are told. You know, it has inherited the Piscean energy, and maybe it's because of its connection with ancient Atlantis. The Tibetan surprisingly tells us that what is now the United States was the center of the old Atlantean continent. So maybe we haven't got such a good idea about how these land masses were distributed in early days, nor, the various floods that occurred. Perhaps we don't know or realize what land masses they involved. But in any case, there is a huge psychic inheritance that is in the atmosphere of the United States. And, it was called in the old days the New Atlantis. I think Francis Bacon had that in mind, the New Atlantis. So the psychism is rampant. Fantastical thinking is rampant. Unfortunately, it's spreading all over the world. And rather than deal with the truth as it is, which would come with a higher degree of mental focus among the masses of people, people are choosing fantasy instead. That is dangerous, and it is to be regretted, and we have to esoterically attempt to combat that. I just want to welcome you, Vicky and Martha and Catherine and Fred, Karen and Mariana, Mary and Miro, Nathnia and Pivy, Tia, Zenaidi and Veronica. These early these early morning European programs pretty much catch America asleep unless it's on the West Coast, and we're grateful that some of you are staying up to join us as we attempt to do our part internally to help combat this dangerous psychic situation. which is aided and abetted, no doubt, by the Lodge of Darkness, seeing yet another opportunity to continue the great war, as it were. And hopefully we avoid the precipitation onto the physical plane. The Revolutionary War in the United States was of fairly long duration. And the position of Pluto at that time, when the war began, is returning within a year. And already you can see that revolution is in the air, but what kind of revolution will it be? That is the question. So we do our work and we use great invocation number 2 when we can, focusing the as much of the energy of divine purpose as may be possible for us. Last night we talked quite a bit, late night here in Europe anyway, quite a bit about Shambhala, and a couple of times a month we have the Shambhala meeting, which has some fascinating material about the divine will and maybe how we can, as students of the esoteric, how we can accord better with divine purpose and divine will. So let us begin then, before we have our reading on the technique involving with illusion, the technique of the presence. But before we have that reading, we'll use great invocation number 2. And we'll seek an alignment as much as possible with divine purpose. And express our willingness to be part of the will of God, the planetary logos, however we can understand that. Let the Lords of Liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, O mighty one. Let the souls of men awaken to the light. And may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O mighty one. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O mighty one. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O Mighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. So, friends, we will continue to do our part, however small in the great scheme of things that part may be. We will continue one way or another for these next 4 years, which will be intense and which will lead up to the great conclave of 2025, when at least on the higher and internal planes, there will be a great change. It may take a while before it works its way down into tangibility. But there are about 100 years remaining before we are clear, clear of the Piscean energy for this cycle and of the sixth ray for this cycle. About 100 years before the age of Aquarius begins in, I'm sorry about my voice here. Morning voice, you know, the frog. Before the age of Aquarius begins in an untrammeled way, a way without all of the interference from the waning age. And we have a lot of work to do before that time. Probably every one of us will have another incarnation before that time, when the new age really begins. Now, let us continue with our reading. And we've been working with the technique of the presence and talking about how ideas and revelations descend and what happens to them on the way down, you know. how they are misinterpreted, how they are distorted, how they're changed into illusion, and how they come out as some kind of concrete doctrinaire. Some kind of concrete doctrine, which is rigid, but which the people who are strictly concrete-minded grasp hold of. Now, if we are real disciples, we can never be satisfied with the testimony of the concrete mind only. We are slowly building the Antikarana in its three phases. It is a triangle from the mental unit to the soul, from the soul to the monastic permanent atom, and then directly from the mental unit to the monastic permanent atom and beyond. So the moment we start to meditate, we are building this Antikarana, even if in the earlier stages. Maybe we have very little idea how many people there are that haven't even begun that process, and perhaps we can help lead forward into that process quite a number of people who can make the transition. Or shall we say, go from the strictly concrete doctrinaire attitude into an attitude which is at least accepting the reality of the inner worlds and the ongoingness of life. Christ's teaching will be so important on reincarnation, and it will be accepted, and survival of the physical body, or beyond the physical body, will be proven. And after that is proven, communication with those who have passed on will be developed by technical means. And eventually, the scientific C group will prove reincarnation to be a fact. And that will change everything in terms of how we receive revelation and from where we receive it, rather than simply repeating the tired old formulas. So, reread these 9 points. That's what we've been doing. In order to prepare for understanding the technique of the presence, which involves the angel of the presence as revealer of the monad, the presence. And we're coming more and more into the possibility that it will be so for us as well, as it has been down the ages. So, unless I'm much mistaken, this is program 175 and reading number 112. And we are on page 183. Is that it? Of the Glamour book. So the basic technique underlies both primary and secondary revelations. In the case of the first, the time cycle is long. In the second, the time cycle is short. Okay, so he's going to explain, I hope, what he means here. Sometimes it's difficult to pick up, where you left off. A very good instance of this process is demonstrated by one of the secondary points of revelation in connection with the teaching which emanated from the hierarchy. The hierarchy, the custodian of secondary revelations, as Shambhala is of primary, custodian of primary revelations. So hierarchy, the custodian of secondary revelations. Let's take a look. And I just want to make it a little bit distinct, and Shambhala primary revelations. With all of the Shambhala impacts occurring now, this must indeed be a time of revelation. So, a very good instance of all of this, which emanated from the hierarchy 50 years ago, and which took the form of the secret doctrine. HPB was the penetrating, sensing, appropriating intuitive. Now, the Tibetan worked with Madame Blavatsky, and to a degree, and different from how it was when he worked with Alice Bailey, she was his amanuensis at the time. So look at those words and think of HPB and her character. She was, I guess you could say, an arhat, a noble one, a warrior, a brave one. This is pretty much what arhat means, noble warrior. Penetrating, sensing, appropriating, intuitive. And, she had, I think, the sign, she was a Leo, yes, as the sun signs go. But she had Cancer rising with the rulership of Neptune, one of the intuitive planets, and I think she had Jupiter and Uranus together in Aquarius. Quite an indication of someone working with the Aquarian hierarchy. You know that Aquarius is the sign that rules the hierarchy, right? Just as Taurus rules the new group of world servers. The revelation she conveyed followed the accustomed routine of all secondary revelations from the source to the outer plane. And many of us have been at least partial students of the secret doctrine, and we know of what great value it has been. And by the way, of course, you have the opportunity now to work with Francis Donald, who is doing a great job working through and artistically working through the secret doctrine. uh, every month maybe, and also The Secret Teaching of All the Ages by Manly Hall. So do try to um, participate, and when Francis is offering these things, because I think it's one of the best ways right now through group study for those of us who haven't quite dared to pick up the big book, The Secret Doctrine, to get something of real value out of it. Okay, so this HPB's revelation, through her power to work on the Buddhic plane, I guess you could say, a penetrating intuitive, followed the normal course of action, and she brought from the source her revelations. Well, not hers, but those of which she became aware, to the outer plane. And there on the outer plane, and this is what happens, okay, friends, this is what happens. There, the minds of men, veiled by illusion, all kinds of misinterpretations, okay, and clouded by glamour. An illusion, you may think you see clearly. Your thought forms are clearer, but they're still erroneous. And when you're dealing with glamour, it's the clouds and you just don't see. There's the difference. So out in the outer plane, the minds of men veiled by illusion, clouded by glamour, formulated it into an inelastic doctrine, recognizing no further revelation and holding steadily. Many of the theosophical groups that the secret doctrine was the final revelation, and that naught must be recognized but that book, and naught deemed correct but their interpretations of that book. Now that would be, well, it's customary for limited minds to do that kind of thing. The Christians have done it, the Muslims have done it, the Quran is the last word, the Bible is the last word. It seems that there's something in the human psyche which is looking for the last word to spare people the terror they must feel when they confront the idea of ongoing revelation over billions and trillions of Earth years. So there are these theosophical fundamentalists, and I guess, we could even turn into Bailey fundamentalists too, except that the Tibetan has become so clear that a new phase of the teaching is on its way. So that kind of loosens our dogmatism a bit and allows us to remain open to new possibilities. I'm grateful to Tuya for having brought me something that can get this frog away from my throat. Okay. Now, if they are correct, then evolutionary revelation is ended, and the plight of humanity is hard indeed. Because we're in the midst of just learning about the ABCs of occultism and of the true mysteries. Just imagine that revelation just stopped, as comfortable as it may make some relatively lazy minds that don't want to go further. No, the truth is quite different. And many people have been eliminated along the way because they challenged the conventional orthodoxy that said this is it. They expanded the human mind, and the people in power didn't want that. Because when the human mind begins to expand, then the right to rule of the rulers is challenged, and people are looked at in a different way, as if they have to provide their own self-rule. It's a transition astrologically from Saturn to Uranus. And Master Moria has said that all of Armageddon is a battle between Saturn and Uranus. I think you can figure out why that would be so, because Saturn rules conditions as they are, and Uranus rules the archetypes which should be and which are disruptive to conditions as they are. Okay, so going on. Even the neophyte, that's us, okay, friends? We are the neophytes. Even the neophyte upon the way of the intuition can begin to develop in himself the power to recognize that which the lower mind cannot give him. And I assume that, we have made this recognition. Otherwise, we could not be persistent students of the ageless wisdom. So think about that for a minute. Even the neophyte, upon the way of intuition, that's a special way. It's not just the way of concrete thought, right? Even the neophyte, upon the way of intuition, can begin to develop in himself the power to recognize that which the lower mind cannot give him. I've noticed through observation that a lot of people, if they are very concrete-minded, and they begin maybe, let's say, a study or a participation in meditation, they fall asleep. I mean, of course, you can be tired and you can fall asleep. That's a different thing. But this is just a tendency that their mental process goes no further than the concrete. And when you begin to lead the meditation into more abstract matters, touching on the higher mind, the abstract mind, the intuition, they just zone out because the mental process doesn't carry them there. So let's not be like that. Let's build that antikarana. Some thought of revealing potency to be used for the helping of the many may drop into his mind. Remember how intuition works. It's not really for the helping of you or me. It has a broader connotation, and it operates in group form, in relation to the welfare of groups. So some thought of revealing potency, some to be used for the helping of the many, may drop into his mind. Some new light upon an old truth may penetrate, releasing the truth from the trammels of orthodoxy. That's a that's a good phrase, isn't it? A trammel, of course, is a fetter, is a chain. It's something that binds you, imprisons you, thus illuminating the consciousness. This can happen even to the relative neophyte upon the way of intuition. Now, that's if you are pushing the third initiation, you are moving beyond strictly mental illumination and spiritual intelligence into intuitive instinct. Now that's a new phase, okay? So this is what can happen for us. And it's a lot different than just talking about things. It carries with it a freshness of revelation. This, in German, Einfall, it means, it's so literal, it means intuition. It fell in, Einfall. So this something that impressed us, that fell into our consciousness, this he must use for all and not for himself alone. Little by little, he learns the way into the world of the intuition. Day by day and year by year, because it's not overnight, he becomes more sensitive to divine ideas and more apt in appropriating them wisely for the use of his fellow men. This is the path that we are treading, and the hierarchy seeks to train intuitives. Now, this whole technique of the presence, by means of which we dispel illusion, requires the use of the intuition, because the intuition is the dispelling agent, just the way the beam of logical light, if I can call it that, is the dissipating agent in the technique of light to dissipate glamour. The hope of the world and the dispelling of illusion lies in the development of intuitives and their conscious training. In other words, when we're going after an intuition, we don't want it to be the kind of thing that is always taking us by surprise and about which we have no say. We want to be able to appropriate on demand through the use of the will and scientifically the testimony of the intuition, and not simply have it as a now and then experience that occurs when it will and not when we will. So the hope of the world lies in the development of the intuitives. Now, you have to begin to think, to what extent are we potentially these intuitives? And how do we get there? How do we get there? There are many natural intuitives whose work is a blend of the higher psychism with flashes of true intuition, because, as we know, there is a strong connection between the Buddhic plane of intuition and the astral plane of psychism. Of course, some of the higher psychism also is occurring on the mental plane. There must be the training of the exact intuitive. Now that is something that Master Hilarion and Master Jesus, I think, together are working on. Master Hilarion, the former St. Paul, concentrated much upon the Buddhic plane and seeks to train psychics in more exact methods so that they can be really reliable. This we've been told by the Tibetan. Just imagine when some of the scientists of the world are also great intuitives. You can see what progress could be made. Paralleling their intuitive response and their effort to precipitate their intuition into the world of human thought, there must also be the steady development of the human mind so that it can grasp and apprehend what is projected. And in this, too, lies the hope of the race. So the two numbers, 4 and 5, together, the first, number 4, indicating the intuition, then number 5, indicating the mind, and those being two great rays of humanity at this time, even though the second ray is growing in the soul nature of humanity. These two develop in a parallel manner, intuition and the interpretive mind. And we get into trouble with illusion when we don't have an adequate interpretive mind. So, we have to question ourselves all the time about our interpretations of these, Einfalls, these intuitions as they come to us, some advanced thought, which is more than just a thought. It carries the energy of the idea. And more people like ourselves have to learn how to work in the realm of ideas. Okay, so obviously we're at kind of a stopping point. And we're on page 184, and I guess we, didn't cover a lot of pages from page 183 to 184. But it doesn't seem that we should go further right now because there's a whole new section coming up. So this would be program 175, and our date today is 5 of March, and our reading has been number 112, and we've gone from 183 to 184, and hopefully have a respect for intuitive development and how we can begin to tread the path of intuition. The way of intuition is what he calls it. I think this takes us to March 12th. I think so. If I'm incorrect, then someone correct me. because we try to have as many of these glamour programs as we can, because the situation is so serious. You know, when people become unhinged, really unhinged, unmoored, untethered. Some very wise things have been said about the state of human consciousness today, and it is predictable, especially, you know, it's a little mini recapitulation of what happened long ago in Atlantean days, when the Lodge of Darkness, seeing an opportunity, stepped in and inflated the tendency to human glamour uh, beyond all normality. It was a huge exaggeration that they promoted, and we can say that little humanity was trying to learn how to think, and the Lodge of Darkness introduced all of this tendency towards distortion. So we have a little bit of a recapitulation concerning that now. Okay, now we're going to, yeah, okay, good. Thanks, Martine, that's a help. Yeah, apparently the 12th of March, and we're in Pisces, you know, the great, the great glamour sign, and a sign of such very clear spiritual perception. So, if there's anybody that has anything you'd like to offer or question, this would be the time to do it before we get involved with our meditation. And I'll be on the lookout here and for anything you might want to say or question or ask in relation to the field of occultism. See, basically people like you and like me, we're trying to take another step. We're trying to go beyond mental approach only, which we have to have, into a sensitive, intuitive approach, which gives us the real substance of ideas. Now that's, you know, as DK says, it's going to take time. But there are meditations in the Moria Federation, and of course given by DK. I would say particularly meditation number 5 out of the 6 or 7 meditations that he gave, which are particularly useful in cultivating the intuition. And naturally, using the antichironic techniques, that will happen. We hold a thought process up to the light, and we wait in silence for impression. And then we begin, if impression has occurred, to translate into intelligent thought our estimation of what has been impressed. And if we are acute in our mind, we will be successful in our translation. And here is Sri Yantra saying that I feel that when some fall asleep, okay, not me to be clear, I understand, during meditations, it means they're not ready to hear what is being offered, but that it lodges somewhere in the mind for later. Well, it may, and you may be correct about this. I've just approached it in a technical way, that the concrete mind, unless there is sufficient development of the first stage of the antikarana from the mental unit to the soul, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute, that is an inhibitor, and that from a technical point of view, they do not go any further, and they become, bored, and they can't relate to it. So it may be, both perspectives may be correct, but I was just dealing with the need for us to go beyond the concrete mind. Let me show you something if I can find it here. Maybe I can. Okay, I see what I have to do. This is one of those charts that Tuya made, and from the Tibetan, coloring it in the appropriate colors. Notice, excuse me, the threefold antikarana. I hope you can see that. And phase one comes from that high point on the lower mental plane that we call the mental unit. And the line of light is built into the soul nature. And, when we use, in our meditation, something the Arcane School uses right away, called the Master in the Heart, we are building this first phase of the antikarana. Excuse me. And unless this is somewhat built, and if people just hover around the mental unit in their thought, they oftentimes drift off. This is my observation. Now, maybe something in them, as you suggest, hears what is being said, and reserves it for later. I'm recalling DK's words to a rather high disciple, someone I think who was, maybe a second-degree disciple. And he says, in your causal body are stored the words of many books. And he was in, so the storage factor is there. And let's remember that at the bottom of the egoic lotus here, and it's not really portrayed right here, at the bottom of the egoic lotus, the atomic triangle is found. The mental unit is actually, in a way, associated with the egoic lotus, and so is the astral permanent atom, and so is the mental permanent, the etheric physical permanent atom. These things are all overlapping, they're not like a bunch of pancakes here, but we spread it out to make it easier to understand and to identify what's going on. But these three units, mental unit, astral permanent atom, etheric physical permanent atom, they are storage units. And so many of the memories that have to do with the lower three worlds are indeed stored within those units. And as far as the material being built into the petals of the egoic lotus, That is the alchemical work of the angel of the presence, who takes what is stored, extracts it, and essentializes it into higher value. You know how in astrology, Venus and value are connected. Uh, extracts the what is stored of memory and builds it into the petal structure of the egoic lotus. So that's the beginning of the Antakarana. The part of the Antakarana DK teaches us in 100 intense, concentrated pages in the rays and the initiations is this. And another part of the Antakarana is working from the ability to have a soul-infused mind and to focus consciousness within the higher mind, and from the higher mind move to the abstract mind, between which there is a distinction. The abstract mind is higher than the higher mind per se. And if we can actually be successful in focusing within our causal body, the inability to do so, he tells us, is what makes people's meditation not successful. But if we can do so, we can build yet another phase of the toward the lowest point of the spiritual triad, the abstract mind. Now, it just told me I have an unstable internet connection. I hope that doesn't materialize. Okay, now, going on. So, let's see, it looks like Shriyantra is saying, yes, I see. Another way of looking at it, perhaps this, some, that. Yes, there are different ways, of course, different perspectives. And one of the reasons that Master DK is such a good teacher is that he offers so many different perspectives on similar points that we get a more rounded out point of view, rather than just rigidly holding to the idea that this is the way it just always is. I was reading just the other day, I just want to say a word about an occult hint. We've been told that Master DK took the fifth initiation in the year 1875. But in one of his later writings, he talks about how he took the fifth initiation about 90 years ago. Now, 90, I think he wrote it somewhere around 1947. Well, obviously, if you go back 90 years from 1947 or so, you don't reach the year 1875. You reach the year 1857. That was 90 years ago when he said he took the fifth initiation. And it's just obvious that if you reverse the figures, 57, you get 75. So we 57, 75, they have the same digits. So maybe indeed he took the fifth initiation in 1875, 1857, but there was a conventional blinding reversal which he presented as 1875. So the way the master has of blinding certain information, well, there are numerous ways, and they are interesting. And when we can begin to discover them, we can begin to receive the import of certain hints that may have just passed us by entirely when we were not aware of his method. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to discuss or question? This diagram is very useful, because it enlarges what we're looking at. And in my book on the egoic lotus, it's a video book, and it's on Makara, and maybe it's also on YouTube, I don't know. It goes step by step, petal by petal, color by color, astrological indication, ray by ray, planet by planet, through all of these unfoldments over time that the growing consciousness experiences. Now, one day in higher psychism, we'll be able to, as the master can, look directly at the development of the egoic lotus, which is the real human being. As I've often said, when you're looking at a human being, don't look at the outer form. Try to come en rapport with the soul nature and its unfoldment behind the human being. Yes, there are souls with more experience or less experience, and there are maybe ways to tell through some kind of sensitive tuning in on the soul nature within the outer form. And every good astrologer or rheologist has to do that, to at least start somewhere. And what good would it do, says Susie Miller? What purpose would be served should a master hide the actual date through reversal? Well, it may be that date, 1857, is significant in terms of previous activities in his life and tells us something about his preparation for the Theosophical Society and so forth. I mean, 1875 in many ways seems convincing. But then why did he write that statement about 90 years ago, which takes us back to a different date where the digits involved are the same? So there may be something about his, who knows, his relationship between KH himself and Master Moria. It may be something about his training. It might be something about his date of birth. It's a hint, you see, and we have to see if it's worth the attempt to unveil the hint. Or let me put it like this way, Susie. It could be it could possibly be a hint, but it is written, shall we say, and it is definite, and the word is 90, and it doesn't come out to 1875, but there's a curious connection. And we have to remember also, when he began to train Madame Blavatsky, who went to Tibet, when did that occur? And did it occur at the time that he was turning a master? Is that possible? And yet she speaks of knowing a youth so pure that no lie would ever cross his lips. And that was Master DK. So how old was he? And maybe it tells us something also for those masters who preserve the body at the fourth initiation. Maybe it tells us something about um, their taking of the fifth initiation and the age at which they could take it. So that's a very special case, because so often people do not preserve the body and they die or they pass away at the fourth degree and do not use the same body to take the fifth degree. So you know, there are many possible lines that one can follow if one suspects that one is being shown a hint. A very good friend of mine just sent a paper to me that I think it was written by Luis Alejandros, who's very active in the Latin American work, and it's really a good article. It was all about Master DK. Was he the Panchen Lama or was he not? Because some people have concluded that since Alice Bailey had kind of a picture of the Panchen Lama on her wall, that Master DK was the Panchen Lama. But I think, you know, after careful scholarship, it is shown that that is not the case. So all kinds of hints about the Tibetan life, the about being an abbot of a certain monastery, a very big monastery, was it Tache Lumpu, something like that. All of that can be maybe discerned if we choose an earlier date for his fifth initiation. I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying it has to be investigated. Okay. Anything else, friends, before we get into our meditation? And I'll tell you what I could ask. Tuya, do you want to do that? Or would you prefer that I continue on this? Are you there? Because I made you a co-host.
I am here, but please do that.
Yeah, okay, I will. I will. Okay, and tonight, gosh, what is our, yes, tonight we're working on the group work, the references regarding the new group of world servers. That's our work for this evening. And by the way, if any of you have been having trouble when we have broadcasts of seeing some kind of crazy subscript with strange words at the bottom of the bottom of your screen, which can be distracting, we have ways to eliminate that, so that you're not bothered by subscript, because it only handles one language at a time and not very well. And when there is the speaking of Finnish, it makes, you know, the nonsense comes out because it's trying to translate Finnish into English and according to sound, and it just doesn't work. So if you're having any trouble, please let me know, and I will send you the material about how to get rid of your bothersome subscript. Okay. So now we'll get into our meditation. And here it is. The glamour that we work with, blind, violent emotional reaction to conspiratorial chamomaniac thinking. It's a rather long, I apologize, but you know what I'm talking about. This is now becoming a world problem. And I could even, as long as we've got a long glamour anyway, I'll add the word fantastical, because it's really based on fantasy and not on reality at all. And of course, this is really what happened in Germany long ago. And in the Axis powers, they inflated who they were. They went backwards, seeking to reawaken the ancient Teuton, to reawaken the samurai, to reawaken the grandeur of Rome. They went backwards to a mythologized past that they thought was much better than their present. And as a result, they fell into huge glamour. Although DK did tell us, when looking at the Axis powers, that Italy represented illusion and was nowhere near as bad as the other two. Germany represented glamour, which was the most powerful, and Japan represented Maya. So there we have, you know, the three-headed dog, Caribous, in the lower regions, and there was an attack, a big attack. Now we have to make sure that any such attack now is neutralized. That'll be our job, and the job of many other thinking people who don't even know that they are associated with the hierarchy, but they are. Okay. So we begin in silence. And we think of ourselves working together, and we begin to unify as a group. We recognize our group unity in the silence. And we use the protective formula, which is in this case, the cross of divinity, forehead, heart, left eye, right eye. And as we make the sign of the cross before us, we trace light in making that cross. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. So there is like a cross before each one of us, and a large cross of divinity before the entire group, representing the entire group. Now we bring together the vital light of matter and the light of mind on the mental plane. We bring them together on the mental plane. And we tune in with soul light. Maybe you can visualize that above the head. And we bring down the soul light, blending with the other two lights, all on the plane of mind. So a triple light is formed. The vital light of matter, the light of mind, and the light of the higher mind, soul light, all coming together on that area of mind which we can control. And visualizing this triple light as one light, from which there will be generated our beam to help dissipate glamour, we say, the light is one. And in that light, we shall see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Now we move forward into the formula. And the group says, as it visualizes itself between the heavenly sources and the subtle area where glamour occurs. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And we visualize that beam of ours going forth from the forehead, the searchlight we have created, we come on rapport with that astral plane and turn the searchlight, the dissipating light, on to the astral plane. And where there are all of these emotional tendencies and reactions that cloud and blind and befog the truth, our beam is penetrating. And then we invoke the spiritual will to strengthen the beam. We strengthen our willingness to work in this way. And imagine the strengthening of the beam we have generated. And we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And we think about the glamour that we're working with. It's this same one for a while. And the light is being thrown upon that glamour. we think about it. What has this kind of glamour wrought? For what has it been responsible when it has operated in humanity? This kind of unthinking mob violent reaction to that which is not true. This blind, violent, emotional reaction to conspiratorial, fantastical, chamomaniac, so-called thinking. Think now, what has this resulted in? Through the ages, and of course more recently in this outrageous attack upon the temple of democracy within the United States, and planned attacks upon other capitals, and as it spreads around the world, the same kind of attacks being planned and plotted to overthrow the will of the people. Think about what this kind of glamour has brought about. So unless there is a mob reacting emotionally in this way, fascism cannot exist. A dictator cannot dictate. Autocracy cannot take the place of democracy unless people react in this way. So this must cease. This blind, violent reaction must cease. And the battle is far from over. So then, let us think of these words of power. As we say together, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of blind, violent, emotional reaction to conspiratorial, fantastical, chamomaniac thinking. power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour. Now, we will take our 5 minutes of silence in which we visualize in our own way the light penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and its dissipation. 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose whilst the work is seen progressing. Oh. We affirm that there has been a weakening of this glamour, a clarification, the dissipation of the fogs and the mists through a rising sun of truth and clarity, and that the many afflicted can be separated from this energy which has subdued them, and can learn to respond appropriately and think with clarity. And so we withdraw our beam back onto the mental plane, and the lights return to their origin. And we sound the Om 3 times, recognizing that there has been a good effect, not only in the astral body, but in the realm of Kamamanas and in the realm of etheric vitality. There has been an attack against illusion, glamour, Maya. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, friends, for meditating together. We will persist the best we can, confident that the interior work we do can have a desirable effect upon this very toxic, violent, fantastical response that so many people fall under and are victimized by. Tonight at 6 p.m. we'll have our work with the new group of world servers and group work in general. So thank you, everybody, from Tuya and me and from the whole communications group of the Moria Federation, and from the several groups that we seek to inspire, Blue Rose Sisterhood and the Esoteric United Nations, and the standard groups that we've had for so long, namely the University of the Seven Rays and the Seven Ray Institute, and finally the Moria Federation more recently. Many blessings and lots of love, and we'll be working with you again soon. Okay. Bye-bye for now.